So in this video today, I want to discuss some of the reasons why a child might say that they hate reading or might avoid reading, and hopefully give some hints and tips to parents in order to get their children reading. So, my child hates reading is something I hear quite often when I'm working with children. For example, I might have a child referred to me who is struggling with writings or spellings, and I will then meet with the parents, and one of the first questions I will ask them is, so what do they read for pleasure at home? And then often I'll get the parents say to me, well, my child doesn't read anything, they hate reading. And it really isn't any wonder if a child hates reading that they're going to then struggle with writing and spelling, because obviously the more you're exposed to vocabulary, the wider your vocabulary will become, and the more likely you are to be able to recognise the words and therefore spell them correctly. So really the best thing we can do at this point is really try and unpick why your child hates reading, because they may say they hate reading, but there'll be a reason behind that feeling. So in this video, I just want to go through a number of the reasons why your child might hate reading and what you can do about it. So first of all, is your child a boy? A lot of boys say they hate reading because they think it's a girly thing to do. So what you then need to think about is, first of all, what male role models are around them in terms of adult male role models that read regularly. So one thing you could do is make explicit what your uncle reads or your cousin reads, and maybe talk about what they read and why they read. The other thing you can do is find books that are appealing to boys. One of the things that's particularly appealing to boys is comics. And you can buy graphic novels, which are basically like comics but in a book form. And they are incredibly inventive, these graphic novels, lots and lots of different stories. But what it can do is maybe make a boy feel like he's not reading books, and therefore he's not being girly, because he's reading a comic aimed at boys. So graphic novels are a really good way to get boys reading. The other thing you could do is think about what interests the child has and find non-fiction books around their interests, such as dinosaurs or space. Okay, so maybe your child isn't a boy, or that's not the reason why they hate reading. So have a think about, well, what books have they got around them? Have they ever read a book that really sparks their interest? So maybe the books they've read so far they've found boring because they haven't found anything relevant to them in those books. So again, what you've got to think about is tapping into your child's interests. And that might mean starting with non-fiction books. You know, reading doesn't have to involve reading fiction. It can be easy reading non-fiction. So again, think about your child's interests and find books that tap into those interests. And be careful not to answer all of your children's questions. So if they have a question about space, go to the library and get a book about space. Rather than turning to Wikipedia or Google to answer their question, go and find a book to help them answer it themselves. Another reason why children will often say they hate reading is because their reading level means that they're reading books that they perceive to be too childish for them. Again, this can be relatively easily fixed. Certainly you need to speak to the school about ensuring that the books that they're being given aren't stigmatising the child and making them feel childish or babyish. There is research out there that says using reading levels in schools is not beneficial to children. The key should be finding books that interest children and supporting them to read those books, even if they're above their level. So just make sure that you're looking for books that are age appropriate. And nowadays there are many easy reads out there aimed at different age groups. So there are easy reads for middle childhood, teenagers and young adults. So the content is age appropriate, but the reading required is at a lower level than the actual child's age. Another reason why a child might say they hate reading is because they're actually struggling to decode the words, and they're struggling to recognise high frequency words. This might be because they've missed some primary school due to illness or moving around. It might be that they had an intermittent hearing problem during primary school, so again they missed some of the teaching around phonics. Really, if this is the case for your child, you need to speak to the child's school and ask them to do an assessment of the child's phonic and high frequency word knowledge. Because once you've identified if there are gaps in this knowledge, then an intervention, small group or one-to-one can be put in place to help the child to close those gaps. So assessment and then intervention is the key there. Another reason why a child might be struggling to decode or read high frequency words is they might have a specific literacy difficulty, such as dyslexia. Now what this means is the child can still learn to read, but they will need lots more practice than children that don't have this genetic difficulty. So again, speak to your school about potentially going back over some of the early reading work that the child's done to ensure that they're secure and fluent. Secure and fluent means being able to read the words quickly and efficiently and also derive meaning at the same time. So it may be that your child is still really struggling to actually read the words themselves, and therefore they're not really interested in the story because they don't have the fluency or automaticity to actually read and also understand the story. So another reason why a child might hate reading is because they're struggling to understand what they're reading. If you've established that that's not because they have a decoding problem, then what you need to think about is how to help them to derive more meaning from what they're reading. And there's a number of techniques you can use to do this at home and at school. So you need to make explicit to the child what good readers do to understand what they are reading. For example, if you come across a word in a piece of text that you don't understand, a good reader will read around that word and guess the meaning based on what the paragraph or the sentence is about. Good readers don't turn to dictionaries constantly to look up words because that interrupts the flow. But what you can do is teach your child to have a guess at what the word might mean based on the words and sentences around it. Another thing you can do with your child is to, at the end of a paragraph or a short chapter, help them to summarise the main plot points in that paragraph or chapter, because it might be that the child doesn't know how to pick up the important information. They might be remembering the detail but forgetting the thread of the story. So helping your child summarise the main plot points, maybe through pictures or just through discussion, will help them to get more understanding from the text. Another thing you can do is get the child to predict what they think might happen next. So what do you think will happen in chapter 2 based on what we know about chapter 1? That's a good way to do it as well. Another thing you need to check is, can your child see the words okay? Are they squinting? Are they bringing the paper up close to their eyes? Do they tell you that the words jump around? In that case, you would need to take them for an eye test, and it can be quite simple, as some children just struggle to read because they can't see the words properly and they don't know that there's anything wrong. They assume everyone has the same issues with reading. So hopefully this video has given you some ideas to unpick why a child might say they hate reading, and some ideas on how you might go about helping that child to develop a love of reading. It's really important that they see you reading and people around them reading. It's important to have books in the house, maybe visit the library monthly. Reading to your children at night is a good way to get them to enjoy reading. When you're reading with your child, don't focus on them trying to read, but focus on enjoying the story together. And it might be that you read a sentence, then you both read the sentence, and then they read the sentence. But the key is to get them to enjoy books and to realise that books provide them entertainment and provide them knowledge. In terms of specific learning difficulties, again, children with attention deficit might struggle to read because they struggle to pay close attention and therefore lose the thread of the story. So using summarising quite frequently is a good idea, as well as prediction. Children with autism spectrum disorder might not really enjoy fiction books, might not really get the point of them, so focus on non-fiction books and tap into their particular interests to help them to get into reading. I think that's about it for this video, and I can see my battery's about to run out. So please put in the comments down below anything you've tried to get children reading, and let me know if you found this video useful in thinking about why your child potentially is a reluctant reader. I will see you again soon. Bye bye.